Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, folks, the more I cover this Mica Miller case and, of course, her husband, John Paul Miller, the pastor, uh, and then to see and hear the tragic end, of course, that occurred here. And my big question today is, would more aggressive police investigation have prevented this tragedy? And I have real questions about that because it seems as though, even though there were a great deal of police reports being made in regards to the harassment that Micah was receiving from her husband, who she was involved in divorce proceedings from, he never took a collar. He never got arrested. And would a potentially well-placed arrest have chilled this dude out? Because I think the more we learn right now about this guy, and perhaps the more we learn about this church, there's some fugaziness, as we would say in New York, and he seems to have gotten away with really a great deal of abuse towards his wife. In New York City, and that's my point of reference, of course, because I was a 27-year NYPD veteran, a sergeant for 22 years. Domestic violence cases were handled with great care because history taught the NYPD and undoubtedly taught other police departments, if the police didn't intervene, then the case would escalate and things would not get better. So I think probably in the early 80s, the NYPD, that's in the 1980s, for those that think that's like the dinosaur age, the early 80s, maybe even as early as the late 70s, the NYPD studied the police response to domestic violence cases. And they wanted to kick it up so that there was very little discretion left to the officers, and most cases would result in arrest. And domestic violence cases, they had a very simple acronym that they used, and it was known as HAD ARM. I'll put it in the I think I put HAS. Let me HAD ARM. And that was the acronym, and it stood for harassment, first or second degree, assault, it's attempted assault and assault third degree. D was disorderly conduct. The second A was assault second degree, which we all know is a felony. The R in the arm was reckless endangerment first degree, and the M was for menacing. Those were the domestic violence offenses. And when they were violated, the officers were encouraged, especially, well, if there was an order of protection, there was no discretion whatsoever. It would be a must arrest situation. But in many of these instances, the regular police officers would call their boss to scene to make the decision. And as a boss, as a sergeant, I was called to the scene many times on this, and there was very little discretion. You always felt better leaving a domestic violence scene with putting someone in handcuffs and arresting them than walking away from it and worrying that it could escalate. And it could escalate to the level of a more serious assault or even a homicide. And back in the day, the earlier days, the NYPD, their strategy would be to try to talk the couple. Mediation it was. And many times they would tell the officer to leave, to go take a walk, go cool off for a while. And where would the husband go? He'd go to a bar, and drink. And what's that going to do? It's going to make him more and more angrier, make him unable to really reason. And it resulted in the escalation of these type of cases. The reason I'm going over all this stuff is because I don't think a very good job was done in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in the investigation of these cases. Why were there 12 or 14 complaint reports made in regards to harassment, right? Aggravated harassment. He was continuing harassing her, and he was never arrested. Why was there never an order of protection issued by a judge? And everyone always says to me, oh, orders of protection are just a piece of paper. You're right. They are just a piece of paper. But when the complainant has that piece of paper with her or him, and they call the police, and the person named in that order of protection is on the scene, it's a must arrest, and they must get arrested. And then when they go through the system, they are the order of protection continues. So that unless the person who's arrested is a narcissist, they're going to stay away because they don't wish to be continuously arrested for these family domestic violence incidents. So in this case, I really questioned, and again, we all know how this ended. It ended tragically. It ended in Mica taking her own life. But could this have been, I just think it could have been handled much better in the way that had they made an arrest early in this case, it would have chilled this guy out. And I think John Miller, the pastor, why wasn't he arrested? Was it his juice he had through the church? Was it his connections? Or did he convince the police that his wife was crazy and he was the sane one? Now things are coming out with seeing him and his irrational behavior, and we question who was the crazy one, you know? I don't think his wife was crazy, you know? Who was? Mica Miller was manipulated, abused, and stalked by her husband. Well, we know what happened. What could have happened if this perhaps would have been handled more aggressively in regards to an arrest early on in this case? You know, Pastor John Miller, he's committing crimes. Why was he not arrested? I'd like to know the answers to that. So guys, hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, and you're about to enter the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Microbizer.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
You know, one of the things that now we're hearing is that John Miller is now admitting to some of his transgressions. He admits he admitted to posting a topless photo of his wife on a social media site. And then he apologized. Oh, I only kept it up there for an hour. I mean, there's a sick dude, right? This is his wife. He's going through an divorce, and he posts a picture like that. When she reached out in that Facebook video recording, she mentioned all the things he was doing to her. And, you know, guys, I'm sorry, but sometimes I was a baptized Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. But sometimes I think religion really holds people down. And they sometimes really get into this mentality that the Lord will take care of this. The Lord's not taking care of anything. You got to take care of it, you know? And if you want to believe that the Lord gave you the strength to do that, fine. But some people that are really wrapped up in religion, they get crazy. They really get nuts. And it seems like this church is one of those churches that encourages people to be totally controlled by their church. Weeks before her suicide, Mica Miller confronted her husband at a tire shop. This says so much when he pretends that he knows nothing about any harassment or anything bad done against his wife. And watch this.
Away.
I'll show you the pictures.
Do you want to go to jail?
They'll be on Facebook in a few hours.
Alrighty, you'll be in jail in a few hours.
Right there, what he was alluding to is he was threatening to put what she knew to be topless photos on, well, you heard him say Facebook of his wife. This is a pastor. This is a man of the cloth.
Walk away.
News Nation obtaining this exclusive video of a heated argument between a South Carolina woman and her estranged husband just weeks before her death. Investigators have ruled 30-year-old Mica Miller's death a suicide. But her family and friends tell News Nation there's much more to what actually happened, especially since Miller had just recently filed for divorce. News Nation's Rich McHugh has looked into this story since the very beginning, joining us live with the latest developments. Rich, what can you tell us?
Hi, Alex. So first, we need some context so our audience can better understand that moment and what they were seeing. We FOIA'd a number of documents from the police. We got back a whole treasure trove from the Myrtle Beach Police Department, about 14 different police reports filed in the past 2 years. Many of them
14 different police reports. And one of the things I also noticed was it seemed like the church was making what I would call retaliatory complaint reports against Mica. They were accusing someone of stealing or embezzling funds. Come on. To me, that was what I would call in the police business, knowing the background of this and all the things that were going on, as a retaliatory complaint report. With James from the chat, there was a good bit of law enforcement that went to Solid Rock Church, so I think he has people covering for him and letting it slide. With James, I have no doubt, and I was hinting at that, and I think that the church exercises a great deal of political influence in that community, probably influence over the police department. I cannot understand, for me, why over a 1 to 2 year period, based on the harassment that Mica was receiving, why this guy was never arrested. I am baffled by that. I am totally baffled. And BB2, Sergeant Miller, he was a pastor. He was able to talk his way out of almost anything. It's so unfortunate. You bet it was. You bet it's unfortunate that this guy got away with it.
Within the past 3 months. There's 2 in question that were filed on March 11th of this year, so just about 2 months ago. I want to read from them directly. They say, police officers respond to East Coast Honda. That's what we see in the video. She's at East Coast Honda in Myrtle Beach in reference to harassment, that Mica was getting her tire fixed after it was slashed, that she told the officer of the tracking device on her car, that the suspect showed up, quote, she told him to go away, but she does not want to talk. And then when she pulled out her phone to record, he sped off. The victim then leaves and goes to East Coast Honda. Again, this is what we're about to see. And the suspect showed up again. That appears to be this moment at East Coast Honda. Let's roll that tape.
Away.
I'll show you the pictures.
Do you want to go to jail?
They'll be on Facebook in a few hours.
Alrighty, you'll be in jail in a few hours. Walk away.
He should have been in jail, but why wasn't he? Why was he never arrested? And think of the frustration that Mica must have had. Did she beg these cops, lock this guy up? Why didn't they? And I think I know the answer to that. I think the answer is it was the power of the church. It was the power they perhaps had over the police department. It was the power they had in this community. It makes no sense why this guy wasn't collared. He should have been collared, and that would have chilled his ass out. Would have left him a little less cocky than you see him here.
Now, this video, for people that have been watching this is a window into the nightmare that she had been living. She had told the police officer in that police report that day that she was afraid for her life. And we're seeing why. She's telling him to walk away. He's saying he's threatening to post pictures on Facebook. He's presumably tracked her to that location. We're going to be asking the police for answers on if they have done any follow-up to these allegations that she has made.
Yeah, really alarming stuff, and great work getting all those documents, Rich. I know it's painted a much different picture than what we've heard over the past.
Thank you for watching.
So, you know, you have it. Scary, right? Scary that this guy got away with this, and for how it was, what, a year and a half to 2 years. How long was this divorce pending? It was pending for a while. And he was controlling her. He put her in a mental hospital because he had power of attorney over her medical. I mean, unbelievable. Talk about control. What husband has that power over his wife, over her medical care? And he was able to put her. And then there was a video of him on the ground, seemingly being high on drugs, crying. And you wonder who was the crazy person? Who was, Debbie McCarthy from the chat, between this case with the possibility of the church having influence over the police and the two Kansas moms with the grandmother having so much influence in that town, very sad. Yes, these things are sad, but the politics and power and money, we'd be naive to think that they don't exist, and we'd be naive to think that they don't influence decision makers. For example, the police. I want to show, I've shown this before, but I think this video really shows how Mica was reaching out and how she didn't get a lot of help.
I've had a lot of women that have reached out to me about situations of abuse. And I just want to tell you what a lot of people have told me lately and reminded me, because I think I forgot. I knew, but I pushed it in the back of my head just because of my situation. But you are the bride of Christ. Before anybody else's bride, male or female, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Abuse is abuse. And you are the bride of Christ. And my Bible says that he took all the abuse you could think of for you so that you didn't have to live that life of slavery and bondage and pain. Jesus took it all for you. So you don't have to stay in a abusive relationship, whether that's sexual, whether that's somebody forcing you to take illegal drugs, or alcohol abuse, or physical abuse, psychological abuse, making you think that this is all your fault, or you're a bad mom, or you're a bad wife, or you're a bad husband, or you're not giving it your all when you know you are. God hates divorce, but why? According to everybody I've asked and the scriptures that I've found, it's because it hurts people. But does abuse hurt people? How do you think God feels about that? So I want to remind you, like a bunch of people have been reminding me lately, that I'm God's bride first. And even an earthly spouse who's a good spouse, when they know that their bride is being hurt, just imagine what an earthly spouse does. What do you think your heavenly spouse does when you're the bride of Christ and he sees his bride going through abuse and hurt? What do you think he thinks about that? So, encouragement in all this is you are the bride of Christ first before anybody else's, and he's got you.
So disturbing, because she is crying out for help here, and clearly this was meant to help other people, but she's really the person who needs the most help. Lynn M from the chat, I wouldn't be surprised if he was texting her, calling her, and or more emails driving her to do what she did. I'm a survivor of a JP, and I know exactly how she felt and what she was going through. Lynn, I don't doubt that he didn't stop stalking her with emails, stalking her with all kinds of things, intervening in her life, trying to threaten her with taking her car away, paying for things. No doubt he was doing that. Between this case with the possibility of the church having influence over the police and the two, yeah, okay, we read that before, Debbie. Lynn M., they think they own you. Absolutely. You know, the family of went on Banfield. Foxy Bot first from the chat. This guy should have been arrested for having illegal relations with underage minors in his church. He admitted it to church staff. Police should have been called. I think this, this may open up the Pandora's box of investigation here, in that he's going to be found out, and the church is going to be found out for a lot of their transgressions, which were somewhat hidden. Now let's go check their books. Let's interview some of their parishioners. Have they been doing anything that's of a criminal nature? Mica Miller's father went on Banfield along with her sister. I want you guys to listen to this and see what the family's going to do from here on out with this case. They clearly are not going to forget about this and let it just go away.
Now exclusively by Mica's father, Michael Francis, and her big sister, Destiny Barrientos. Thank you to both of you. And may I just say I am so sorry to be meeting you under these circumstances. And my heart goes out to your family in dealing with what you are coping with. I cannot imagine being in your shoes. Michael, if I may begin with you, you feel that the investigation has been less than complete, to say the least, on Mica's death. What do you believe happened? What is your theory of how Mica died?
My theory of how Mica died? Well, I know she was pushed to the brink. I know that there is no reason for her to be out there in that area. We've never been there. She's never been there. I mean, my theory is broad right now. There's bruises on her hand. There's injury to her other arm, like a handprint. And these things were not documented, and they did not show up for no reason. And we were not satisfied with the answers that we were given in the entirety. It didn't seem like enough was done. And we just want more answers. We want more checking into this.
And Destiny, the investigators still have not released Mica's personal possessions, like her cell phone in particular, which is a pretty critical piece of evidence. Tell me why it is so important for the family to get those things back.
Mica had been gathering information to help with her divorce for quite a while, previous to her commitment to the hospital that was unwilling. She had all of her stuff on her phone at that time and her laptop. When she was committed against her will, John Paul had went to the hospital to pick up her items, deleted all of her information off of those items, and held them till they were past the date that we could recover anything. So it's very vital for us to get this cell phone that she currently had, because we do believe that there could be quite a bit of evidence on there.
Michael, one of the things that I think has stuck with a lot of people is that Mica met John Paul when she was in the youth ministry in the church, when she was just 14, and he was a leader in the church. That did not escape a lot of people. Ultimately, they ended up married. But is there something that you and the family know or feel or believe about Mica's claim that she was being groomed from the time she was a child?
In the chat, Foxy Bot, his twisted father that abused those boys brought back a teenage victim and his little sister. His dad was a pastor too. They have a frightening background of abusing underage kids and teens. Foxy Bot, I wonder why there hasn't been an investigation into this. Larry Jensen, I feel that the tracking device was so he wouldn't be found while he was with his love affair. Possibly. Kate, 4 big little voices. Just because we can't fully figure out his evil ways doesn't mean he didn't have them. Kate, that's what we're absolutely saying. And what my whole dissertation here is wondering how he got away with this for so long. Because he was doing, look, just with his wife. And how about, no one knows if they talk about grooming her since she was 14. No one knows if he had an illegal relationship with her when she was underage. It's implied, but no one can say for sure that it occurred, even the family.
Absolutely. Yes, her demeanor changed over time, and she became more and more compressed, less and less of herself. And as soon as they got married, her behavior went downhill fast as far as being her lively, jovial self. And she seemed to be more sad, more under control, and didn't seem to be her free self, didn't seem to be able to accomplish things she wanted to without him causing them to end. She would do something amazing and he would shut it down and would not repeat function. I just believe he really compressed her. I really believe that he just sucked the life right out of her and caused her to go downhill from the moment after they got married, the moment after he forced her to have a certain surgery. And she had a violent reaction from the anesthesia. And he took advantage of that.
What kind of surgery are you saying he forced her to have?
I would rather not say.
Okay, I understand. But I do want to pull on that thread a little. Do you believe that John Paul Miller had inappropriate sexual contact with Mica before she was legally allowed to be in that kind of a relationship? Do you think there could be charges in terms of the age difference between them?
Right. I'm unaware of anything that occurred when she was still a young teen, 14 or so. Destiny, do you have anything? I'm not sure.
As far as him reaching out to her and continuously texting her while she was a teen, he convinced her to get away from our family during her teens, told her that he would find different households for her to live in within the church to get her away from our family, as well as he helped her get a car and told her to find adults and tell them stories that they could trust, to get her away from our family. And that's how he initially isolated her during her teens.
Do you think, Destiny, that he was having a sexual relationship with her when she was underage?
That I can't lay any claim to. I'm not exactly sure to the extent of the relationship at that time, other than the getting her away from the family, getting her to talk to other people and putting her in homes of other family members. But that is when I believe that the initial grooming did start.
And Destiny, just describe some of the changes that you saw in your sister after she married John Paul.
Mica was so full of life. She was funny and energetic, someone that just lit up every room that she walked into. And once they were together, especially for that first initial couple years, I mean, she just deteriorated. She was not herself. You could see that maybe she was you could see just the downfall in her personality as far as becoming sad or trying to put on a mask to not let people in of her own private, from what I'm finding out, on her own private hell.
Michael, is there a chance that you and your family will launch any kind of civil litigation against John Paul Miller, whether it's wrongful death or whether it's an encouragement for the police to launch criminal charges for anything they may discover in the evidence that we've been able to unearth, the stalking and the harassment, the physical evidence and the admissions and the emails, even to our producer, that he had done those things?
Absolutely. We're going to push for every law that can help and push for laws that don't even exist yet. We need a lot of support. We need people that can help write new laws if necessary, and staff this situation to springboard forward and protect Mica and also protect anybody else in the future. And we'll definitely pursue that. Wrongful, everything. He has caused terrible pain and tragedy throughout this.
Michael, what was the last conversation you had with your daughter, Mica?
It was about,
I just think that I don't know if there's any chance whatsoever they could file any kind of criminal case, but I really think that they have really an excellent civil case against John Paul Miller, the pastor, for wrongful death, because no doubt he caused her great psychological harm. He stalked her. He admits to stalking her. He seems like a real cowardly type, just a real coward who hides behind his job as a pastor, but he's a weak individual. And I'm not liking what I'm seeing of this church. And I have people contact me also and tell me, like, when you have people, here he was when she was 14 years old, encouraging her to leave her family to get into the church's flock. That sounds like, to me, like not a church, but a cult, you know? Just, you know, absolutely horrific. And this is the kind of influence he was able to wield over young people, or wield over people. You know, look, I don't want to beat up on religion, but many times people that really reach out and are lost, they turn to religion. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with religion, but some religions take advantage of this, and they take advantage of the people. Why are there so many cases like this in all kinds of different religions across the country? The abuse of children, the abuse of adults, taking advantage of people. Foxy Butt, police off the cuff. Did you see his girlfriend's husband, a quadriplegic, mysteriously drowned? He was a good-looking man and public speaker. He was the pastor that did the sermon at his funeral. Foxy Butt, I do know about that. You know, and there's a lot of avenues of investigation by the Myrtle Beach police. They're not done. I mean, I think that the investigation they did in regards to what was going on here was terrible. I mean, it was allowed to go to the point where Mica was driven to suicide. Kate, 4 big little voices from the chat. But what's scary is I had a phone call with the person, didn't know for sure if it was really my friend or not. They used several techniques to confuse things. Kate, I know you're talking about AI, and I've heard other people that have had that same experience you're describing, where AI is actually able to produce the voices and of a loved one, and usually what they try to do is extort money out of you, and saying that your person was just involved in a car accident, your relative, and they need you to send money to this box, this whatever, Venmo, this PayPal, whatever, and it's a totally a fraud. Shell Chicago, JP's girlfriend Susie's husband conveniently drowned. Susie collected a lot of money as a result of his accidental death. JP spoke at the dead man's service at the church. Just horrific, some of this stuff, just unbelievable. John Paul admitted that some of his conduct in regards to this case, specifically taking topless pictures of his wife and threatening, or did put him on social media, he said that was evil, but he did it.
Senior investigative reporter Rich McHugh, who has been digging into this story for us all week long. Rich, there is this incredibly important sort of stalking report. And we were talking about it quite a bit after we discovered that Mica had taken her life. It talks about a tracker being put on her car. It talks about her tires being slashed. It talks about this device being jabbed into her tires to let the air out. It talks about a man showing up at a gas station, then following her to a car dealership, and that man's name was redacted all the way through. Last night, we learned the man's name was actually John Paul Miller, the estranged husband.
You know, I was baffled in the beginning when I first heard this, that his name was redacted from the report. Why? And why wasn't he arrested for this? This tire slashing wasn't a one-time incident. This putting these trackers in her car was not a one-time incident. He should have been arrested, this guy, and he wasn't, which led to this tragedy.
The man who everybody had pointed to as the cause of all of this prior to finding out it was a suicide. But now we actually have an email from him when he's admitting to some of this behavior. What have you found out?
So we've come into a lot of information that has been sent to the police, and that's the key thing here, because people are wondering, okay, so what are police to do with all of these allegations? Do they even know? And now we know that her family has forwarded all of this information to the police. One of the things that is included in these documents is an apology email from him to Mica on April 15th of this year, which is about 12 days before she died. In it, he writes, "I'm sorry for damaging your car, tires, etc. If you ever come back, I will turn in both cars and get you a nice SUV or whatever car you want. Again, my horrible flesh pattern of hurting someone when they hurt me."
Wow. And the police couldn't find this evidence to arrest him? He admits to this. And what if that was presented to them? This guy should have been arrested, and he wasn't. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but this could have prevented the horrible tragedy that befell Mica.
So there you have it. He's kind of outing himself.
And I'll give you something shiny and new if you just come back to me. Boy, if I had a dime, Rich, for every time I've seen an abusive relationship like that. So JP, actually, Mr. Miller, John Paul Miller, Pastor Miller, has been having conversations with you via, texting back and forth. And if I understand this correctly, he has also admitted directly to you that he's the person who put the tracker on the car.
That's right. That's right. So earlier this week, I believe it was Monday, I engaged with him and he started talking back with me kind of unprovoked. And I also want to read this because this thing stood out to me when I read it at the time. I didn't really know it. He said, this is JP to me, I even hired a PI to put trackers on her car to know if she was going to a gun store because she kept trying to get a gun for the past few months. I have never once in my entire life ever hurt her in any way.
Wow. If he was Pinocchio, we'd all be getting hit in the head with a nose right now. He never, ever hurt her in any way whatsoever. But he admits slashing her tires, tracking her, and or just stalking her, but he never hurt her in any way. This guy is an EDP. That's a police term, emotionally disturbed person.
Hour and immediately taken down. I was hurt that you were telling everyone horrible, intimate details of my past sin, and I just wanted to try and hurt you. Please forgive me. It was evil of me to do that.
Wow. Wow. And again, he's never been arrested. Never arrested for this, but he admits to doing this horrible thing, but yet no arrest.
A photo that was produced on the internet was topless of her. We're not going to show that here, of course, but in the apology, he says, "I'm sorry for putting a picture of you on the internet. It was for less than 1 hour and immediately taken down. I was hurt that you were telling everyone horrible, intimate details of my past sin, and I just wanted to try and hurt you. Please forgive me. It was evil of me to do."
He was just trying to hurt her, but yet he's never, ever hurt her before. He just said that, so this guy's a nutcase too.
That.
Oh, so yeah, it's only up there for an hour. Like that doesn't have life elsewhere when people download naked photos and they live forever. And I'm sorry, but there's the but. Like that's, again, just a classic pattern that you often see. So you have also seen text messages between John Paul Miller and Mica's family. What were in those text messages?
Some of the text messages I've seen were pictures of text chains where her family was communicating, and Mica was on there, but Mica, this was at a time where I believe she was in the hospital. And so the Mica jumps into the conversation and said something like, "Happy Valentine's Day to me." And I believe her mother or a relative says, "Mica, is that you?" And it was quickly figured out that this was not Mica. This was JP. That he had possession of the phone, and it was his interpretation, legal interpretation, that it was marital property. And so this is just one of a number of instances. You know, he took over her Facebook page. Her brother took it back, and her sister took it back and said, "Hey, this account has been taken over. Do not post." There's a lot here. There's a lot here, actually.
Like, I mean, marital property, sure, but communicating as someone else is not marital property. You can't just grab a marital property telephone and then pretend to be like. There's a distortion if I've ever heard one. So Mica herself wrote something before she died, a document of sorts. Did you get your hands on it, and what's in it?
Yes. So this is a letter that she wrote 2 days after this apology letter, if I have this correct, and roughly 9 days before she died. It was a letter for the courts in part of her divorce court proceedings, and it's a hard thing to read. I'll just be completely honest. She lays out like the entire case of why she's leaving him and what has happened to her. I just want to read a snippet of it. I don't even know if we have it, but her opening sentence is, "Since the day we became husband and wife, I have been abused in every way I can think of, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, financially, and physically. He has harassed me physically and electronically with letters, phone calls, emails, texts, hacking my emails, hacking my personal Facebook and impersonating me, using my stolen phone to send texts and emails out to church members." It goes on and on and on. "Installing tracking devices on my vehicle, on my godmother's vehicle. The trackers were found on March 11th, March 14th, March 24th, April 15th. All of these have been documented and reported to the police." That's the key here, actually, is that the police
what I wanted to
have all
ask.
this information.
But the police have all this. They have the letter. They have the incidents. They have police reports. Did they do anything about it?
I've reached out to all the police agencies today. I only heard back from one of the agencies that was the lead agency investigating her death in North Carolina. Keep in mind, she's from South Carolina. She died in North Carolina. They kind of passed the buck. They said, "This is not related to her death. You need to contact the police agencies in South Carolina." I have, and I haven't heard back. So it'll be interesting to see what they do respond, because from what I can tell, from what I can gather from conversations with her family, and you're about to speak to them directly, but they'd like to see some charges come from these past incidences. Like, there's questions about legally, what lines were crossed here. And it seems to me
at least
that there may have been some.
I mean, just at least that an investigation has been going on, right? With all of these reports and all of this evidence.
Right.
Rich McHugh, amazing.
Unbelievable that all the evidence that you just heard of, look at what she was going through. And how was there, again, let me beat this dead horse, how was there no arrest of this guy? You know what? I have a question also for the future. Who would ever listen to this guy as a pastor? Who would listen, knowing what this guy has done? This guy's a criminal. And people are going to listen to him give a sermon? People are going to let him be their spiritual guider? This guy's an EDP, emotionally disturbed person. He should never step on the altar of a church ever again. This is just incredible. I just can't understand it. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right location. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family. If you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels where you can become a member of this channel. DH, corruption, no doubt. This is what corruption is called. And I don't know the level of power and political influence that this church has in that community, but to see that what this guy got away with and was never collared, it was never arrested, just to me unbelievable. Rita, excuse me, I just had Rita. Here we go. Rita, and BB2, yes, ma'am. The bruises go away and you can hide them, but the verbal abuse is still there. Foxy Bot, You'd be surprised at people who put these pastors on pedestals. He was allegedly charismatic. In other words, a con artist. Yeah, there's many of them, you know. Kate for Big Little Voices. The man may be able to be charged for some of his crimes and bet there are serious crimes, but he may never be formally indicted in her death as we see these things come back in time. Kate for Big Little Voices. I don't think that they can, I mean, for everyone that's listening and watching this story, I think it becomes pretty clear that he drove her to do what she did. But did he physically pull the trigger? No, but he drove her to do that. And as my dissertation for this entire episode goes, would more aggressive police investigation have prevented the tragedy? And my answer to that is yes, it would have. It would have. If this guy would have taken a collar, if he would have been locked up, I think there's a good chance that he wouldn't have continued his behavior. Look, she wanted out. He kept stalking her. He kept threatening, posting topless pictures of her, using her phone to text as if it was her. This guy's a devious. I'm sure that's not legal to do that. That's got to be a form of aggravated harassment. Marital property. Where did that come from? This guy's, I don't know who's telling him that. And, you know, and when he says that he never, ever, ever mistreated her whatsoever, this guy is really a sick dude. And I just hope he gets his. I really do, because he's a dangerous guy, you know. And who's his next victim, you know? Who's his next victim? And to me, as we see the pictures up on the screen, to me, he mind controlled this young girl that he met when she was 14 years old. And from the time you heard her in that statement she wrote, by the time she met him and all the interactions she had with him, her life's been miserable. It's been a horror show, you know? And then him committing all these illegal acts, which he was never been held accountable for. On the screen now, you see this waitress who he went out and left her a 50% tip and left his number on the receipt and asked her to send, you know, sexy pictures of herself in a bikini or naked to him. So this is a pastor of a church. Yeah. And of course, this waitress found out who he was. There's the little pastor, John Miller, asked a waitress to send him bikini pics after leaving his phone number and a large tip. Wow, what a sport. What a sport, you know. You know, we spoke a lot about the, in this case also, the 9/11 operator and whether or not, Lula Morocco, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you. Good to see you back in the chat. You know what? The 9/11 operator, some people felt we were a little bit too harsh on her. And I just think that I had to point it out that, she didn't do a good job. And whether it was just lack of training, I don't know. But I'm going to play the 9/11 call right here.
What's the address of your emergency?
Hi, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
Let me see. You don't know where you're at?
In National Park.
What's the phone number you're calling me from? Where's the park located at?
In Fair Bluff.
Let's see.
I have my location on, I think, on my phone. find my phone is on. I just did my my location.
Okay, I'm showing. Hold on 1 second. I don't think you are in Robeson County. Are you at the Lumbee River State Park? In
Yeah, that's where I am.
Okay. Tell me what's happened.
I'm about to kill myself, and I just want my family to know where to find me.
Okay, ma'am.
I'm just that reaction. I'm just startled by. Right there. I mean, she should have jumped into action, talking to her, reassuring her, tried to get her to engage in conversation at the same time, get her help to the scene. But she just didn't seem to be up to it. She didn't seem to know what to do. Deb Galloway from the chat, she hung up on the 9/11 operator after what she said, but the lady should have asked what she needed right away, and she could have talked to her while she was searching for where she was. Mistake. Deb, 100%. I'm baffled by this. It just was like, Kathy Sue, 9/11 operator, was clearly not compassionate. Can you imagine Micah's feelings of dismal abandonment? She basically said, go ahead and suicide yourself. Yeah, I mean, she should have jumped into action and tried to help this woman. Foxy Bot, I had a horrible 9/11 operator when my father was dying. I was giving him CPR. She said, you don't have to count on compressions. Yes, you do. Well, you know something, at some point, you got to just tell the 911 operator, just get help here. And I'm to you because they try to keep you on the phone. Danielle from Texas, terrible 9/11 call. Yeah, Danielle, that was one of the worst 9/11 operators I've ever heard in my police career. And I've heard many bad ones. So yeah, it was just totally horrific. Sana Elise Holt Johnson, welcome. Thank you for coming from such a far distance, but welcome. Kate for Big Little Voices, think 9/11 wanted to keep her from jumping off the line too quickly. The 911 was sending help already. Kate for Big Little Voice, yes, she was, but she should have jumped right into conversation. When someone gives you an intention of committing suicide, you got to jump into action. You can't wait. You can't wait for the person to hang up. And she didn't do any of those things. You know, did she call for help to get? Yeah, absolutely. DB, this operator failed her miserably. Just simple human empathy could have accomplished so much. Maybe could have saved her life. You know, Barbara Miller, again, this lady was doing everything right, reaching out for help over and over again. Heartbreaking. Yes, Mica was doing everything right, but yet she was failed. The system totally failed her. You know, just outrageous how much the system failed this poor lady. And there's enough blame, and not that I'm trying to assign blame, but there's enough blame to go around for many people. And that's what's so sad about this.
Officials say a man approached them and said he heard crying and a gunshot while he was fishing at the state park in nearby North Carolina, where they say Mica Miller took her own life. Ryan Bass joins us live. And Ryan, so much speculation about this case and new developments. How much weight are police putting on what this man says he heard?
Well, they're definitely taking his account into consideration here, Nick. And look, there's so much national curiosity around Mica Miller's death, but police say there's no conspiracy theory here. She took her own life. And now that man, as you mentioned, is giving us new details about a gunshot that he heard in that same park around the time of Mica Miller's death. Still, there's questions that remain about her relationship with her husband, John Paul Miller, a local pastor at a church that both were involved in. Now, the Robeson County Medical Examiner did confirm that Miller died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound on April 27th. Her body was found in the water at Lumbee River State Park, about 70 miles north of Myrtle Beach. A man who claimed to have found Mica's fanny pack with her ID inside, but didn't want his face shown, spoke exclusively with our local affiliate WBTW, saying he heard crying, a gunshot, and then silence.
Maybe 5 minutes after getting into the slough, I heard a cry, a faint cry. Heard it for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and the crying stopped. He was out. If it would have been a person out there crying in the opening where I could see him, I'd have checked on him all day long.
And in new police reports obtained by that News Nation affiliate, Mica told police earlier this year that John Paul had been grooming her for years since she started working for him at the church. They've known each other, she said, since she was 10 years old. Other findings include John Paul having power of attorney over Mica's health care, allegedly transferring the deed of their home to one of his sons and moving Mica's belongings from their home while she experienced a mental health crisis. Now, police released a timeline of the day that Mica died, from the moment she left her house at just after 11:30 in the morning to when she bought the gun police found at the scene at 12:13 in the afternoon, and then less than 3 hours later when she called 911 from that state park, threatening to take her own life. Now, the sheriff's office said that Pastor Miller was not in North Carolina the night before or the day of Mica's death. He was in Charleston at an athletic event, confirmed by surveillance video. He then broke the news to his congregation on the 28th, claiming Mica was struggling with mental illness and took her own life. But friends and family of Mica's say she could not have killed herself. Mica had filed for a divorce from John Paul Miller multiple times, according to reports, including days before her death. She hinted on social media to being in an abusive relationship. There's also recent police reports Mica filed in March saying she was fearful for her life, claiming that someone slashed her tires and a GPS tracking device was put on her car. Now, while many conspiracy theorists have tried to link John Paul Miller to Mica's death, police say the facts show she died by suicide based on surveillance footage, interviews, physical evidence, and of course, the medical examiner's report. Now, Pastor Miller has since been released from his senior pastor duties at Solid Rock Church and told our Rich McHugh that he never hurt Mica in a text message. But again, so many close friends and relatives here, Nick, are saying that Mica taking her own life just isn't possible.
Thanks for.
So, you know something, we know a lot more since all of this stuff came out. And one of the things we do know is that did John Paul Miller pull the trigger? No. But did he have an assist? Did he drive poor Mica to this? You bet. You look at this, and I really do hope that the family follows through with a civil case against this guy, because he drove her to it. Matilda Green, all PDs can do more. Unfortunately, there is so much crime, the top of the pile on top of the deaths of law enforcement as priority, or the cases that get out into the media. You know, Matilda, earlier on in the show, I went over how important domestic violence cases are, because when they're not addressed, that's when they escalate and something bad really happens. Shell Chicago, seriously, ladies, try faking that voice on the 911 call. You too will hear that you could imitate it. There's checks and balances to every investigation, guys. People are trying to say that she didn't make that call. They're gonna, of course, call her ID. That was her phone. They potentially could fingerprint her phone, left DNA on her phone. Was there any other DNA belonging to anyone else, or just so there's checks and balances. No one saw anyone else near her when this happened. She called right before she did it. She called the 911 operator. So we can't just keep conspiracy theorying on this, because I think science tells us what happened here. And I don't think there's any doubt that she did what she did. Lynn M., people that have spoken out that belong to the church before said he has had many under his thumb and also blackmails many. He's disgusting and evil. Lynn, it seems like you know this guy. Were you a member of this church? Foxy Bot, I got a heartbeat back. Firemen took over. They said I did good. I was so hoping he would come back. I had saved him 3 years before that, doing CPR mouth to mouth. She said start compressions. You're talking about your own experience doing CPR on your father. Amber E. Yes, and could it have been prevented had he been held accountable prior to this? I think it could have been prevented if so. Amber E., I agree with you. Pam's Corner on YouTube, the truth. No one can make you kill yourself. She wanted to do it. Well, someone drove her to that. Perhaps, suicide comes from a state of feeling helpless, a state of depression, a state of feeling that there's no other way out than this, a state of feeling that death will be better than the life you have. So trust me, I've been to hundreds of suicides as a investigative boss from Manhattan North Homicide Squad. So I know of which I speak, and it's a horrific thing, what happened to Mica. But I really do think that this guy really deserves credit for this, because he's a dirtbag. He is an absolute dirtbag, this guy, John Paul Miller. And if he ever steps on a altar of a church again, something like if you should be licensed, I guess you're ordained. I don't know exactly how that works. He should never step on an altar again. This guy's got a mean streak in him.
Which has been ruled a suicide. But her friends and her family are pushing for the investigation to continue, and we have learned some disturbing new information that tells us why. It was already known that the Millers had a troubled marriage, and hey, behind closed doors, even the happiest couples have rough patches, but not like this. A trove of court and police documents released today reveals the Millers' relationship was no portrait of connubial bliss, allegedly characterized by emotional abuse, manipulation, and control. John Paul, who until recently was the pastor of the Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach, has just released a statement denying these allegations. The documents were released just weeks after Mica took her own life on April 27th, her suicide coming 2 days after she served her husband with divorce papers to end their 7-year marriage. Joining us now with details is News Nation investigative correspondent Rich McHugh, who's been digging.
Well, we saw all of this. We know about all the different reports. We know about him stalking. We know about him slashing her tires. We know about the continuing abuse. We know about him posting a topless photo of her. We found all these things. And we also found out about this guy's not wrapped too tight himself. A video of him sort of EDPing on the ground. And so is this the person that should be able to commit his wife to a mental hospital when he's got his own issues, big time issues, So guys, I think that, the whole point of this was Mica Miller with more aggressive police investigation have prevented the tragedy. And my answer to that is 100% yes. And we'll be following this case. If there are any new developments in regards to the investigation, possibly John Paul Miller being held accountable, that's coming, but it's probably going to take lots of time. So, folks, I just want to really thank everyone for tuning in today. Following this case, this is a real tragic case for those that have followed it from the beginning. And I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.